Well, welcome to Grover Hill Zion United Methodist Church, Thursday evening devotions from around the kitchen table, where we've been talking about some of the great hymns of the church, and now during Advent we've been talking about some of the Christmas carols, the great Christmas carols of the church, and of course there are many more than we're ever going to get covered. But tonight, just the night before Christmas Eve, I want to just share the story with you, the story behind a wonderful Christmas hymn or Christmas carol called "Do You Hear What I Hear?" And it's in the background with Bing Crosby singing it, but many other folks have sang it since it's been written as well. So if you want a blessing, look it up and listen to it. Now, if you've ever thought about it at all, and you've heard this song, you probably assume that it's that this Christmas carol was along the lines of some of the older Christmas carols, that some of the folk songs that have been around for many, many years. I know I never really thought about it, but I just assumed because of the melody that it was an older song. But when I researched it, "Do you hear what I hear?" I discovered the meaning of it and why it was written was really quite different. And it was rather surprising, I thought, as well, when I heard it. Well, the composers, their daughter, Gabriel Regni, and I'll tell you more about the composers in a moment. But Gabriel Regni, their daughter, said, "Do you hear what I hear?" was not intended as a religious song. Isn't that surprising? She said her parents were not religious at all. Her mother was raised Jewish, and her father was raised Catholic, but he left the church. And she said that it really always blows my mind to think about how the two of them wrote a very, very Christian song. First, it isn't as old as we think. You know, we just assume that all those Christmas carols have been around for a while. But this was written in 1962 at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The world hovered on the brink of destruction for several days in October and November of 1962 as a standoff between the USSR and the United States continued over the sending of short and medium-range ballistic missiles by the Russians to Cuba. Those missiles were being put in place as a result of the failed Bay of Pigs invasion by the United States forces into Cuba in an attempt to overthrow the Castro regime. Russia considered it a possibility that a future invasion by the U.S. might succeed. So the then leader in Moscow of Russia, Nikita Khrushchev, decided to put a strong deterrent in place. In the end, though, President Kennedy ordered him to get those missiles out of Cuba, and Russia backed down and removed the missiles, with a lot of back-channel negotiations coming into play. The world then breathed a little easier. There was a very real fear at the time that this might be the moment when things reached a tipping point. In New York City, the songwriting team of Noel Rigney and Gloria Shane Baker were worried along with everyone else. They had been asked to write a song on the B-side of a record, but they were having a difficult time in getting in the mood to do so. Then a small event then set their creativity into motion. In the studio, the producer was listening to the radio to see if the world had been obliterated yet. Rigney said that en route to his home, he saw two mothers with their babies in strollers. The little angels were looking at each other and just smiling, as infants do. And all of a sudden, he said his mood was extraordinary. A glimpse of these babies changed his poetic heart, and the little ones reminded him of newborn lambs. Thus the song begins, "Said the night wind to the little lamb." It's about how the threat of nuclear war inspired this creative Christmas song. Now, Rigney himself had an interesting background, even apart from his songwriting career. He was originally from France, and during World War II he had been conscripted into the German army after the Nazis overran his country of France. And instead of becoming and staying in the Nazi army or the German army, he became a double agent for France, for the French resistance. And he began passing intelligence about the German strategy to the French. In one case, he led his unit into an ambush, and he himself was wounded. Thereafter, he deserted the German army and worked full-time for the French resistance until the war was over. And then he came to America and began a successful music career. There he met and married his partner, Gloria Shane Baker, who was an accomplished pianist. And together they wrote some great popular secular hymns in the 60s and the 70s. The song about a nun, and Bobby Vinton sang a popular song, and there were a number of other songs as well. Now this song, Do You Hear What I Hear, became very popular. Do you hear what I hear? It really took off when Bing Crosby recorded it in 1963. Few people thought of it as anything other than just a standard Christmas song. And the mention of the child certainly places it in the Christmas context. But there are clues in it, though, if you listen for them. That it has a contemporary framework. In particular, the plea of people to pray for peace. The scriptures tell us to pray for peace as well, so that's not really secular, but in this context, the songwriters intended it for it to be, I guess. We're told to pray for the peace of Israel. Jesus himself is known as the Prince of Peace. Peace, God's peace, coming into the world. So the song tells us, though, to pray for peace everywhere. And of course, that's the whole point of the lyrics of the song, is to pray for peace. And the line about the star with a tail as big as a kite, it seems puzzling at first, doesn't it? But then when you think about it, it's simply a reference, or we used to think of it as a reference to the Christmas illustration that we see of the lower ray of the Star of David, or the Star of Bethlehem, that had been lengthened until it touched the manger, touched the stable where Jesus lay. When you know the context of the words, suddenly that tale becomes ominous. It indeed invokes the biblical star that led the Magi to the Christ child. But it also invokes a nuclear missile It's almost as if the song is saying, which one will it be? Will it be the Prince of Peace, or will it be a terrible war?
8100 from Middle Point, 12 at 88.
Notice the slow build in its volume and the excitement that mirrors the climb from the inanimate wind to the King who has the power to proclaim peace. Regney and Baker said that they couldn't even get through the song themselves without tearing up. And when Regney died in 2002, they performed this song at his funeral. I think I mentioned earlier that Do You Hear What I Hear has been sung by hundreds of musicians and sold tens of millions of copies since it was written in 1962. Carrie Underwood is perhaps the one of the more modern singers that I can think of that has recorded this song, as well as a host of others. So I encourage you to look it up, and you'll find a blessing there. A Merry Christmas.